Democrats who support the Climate Commitment Act are absolutely desperate. They are using every tool at their disposal to try to make sure that voters don't repeal the CCA in November. We've talked about some of those things. On the show yesterday, we talked about how Bill Gates, one of the world's richest men, put $1 million into the effort to try to keep the CCA on the books. A rich guy trying to keep your gas prices high. Imagine that. We talked about how during this past legislative session, Democrats approved payoffs to voters right before the November election. Literally $200 checks, CCA refunds that are going to go to voters right before the November election. It's just a bribe to try to get them not to repeal the CCA. And now our friend Todd Myers over at the Washington Policy Center is letting us in on another way that taxpayer funds are being used to try to bribe voters into rejecting the CCA repeal. This segment is brought to you by Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. Sick of fad diets that work for a couple months and then you gain all the weight back? Well, I'm down 37 pounds on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program, and I've kept that weight off for more than a year. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at eastsideweightlossclinic.com. Todd Myers always has the good stuff. He's always paying attention to these little things that are happening on environmental policy. And of course, like us, he's been tracking some of the ways in which Governor Jay Inslee and his buddies are trying to, I think, abuse the system to keep the CCA in place, to improperly influence voters ahead of November. So one of the ways is those payoffs. But Todd Myers just dropped a story for Washington Policy Center, and it focuses on this website. It is a state website. It says Washington Climate Action. And basically what the purpose of this site is a guide to entities that are benefiting from CCA money. And as part of getting money from the Climate Commitment Act, which is just your money that you pay at the gas pump, part of getting that money is they have an obligation to make sure everyone knows where the money came from and to make sure everyone knows how great the Climate Commitment Act is. The website literally says, to strengthen public awareness of how Climate Commitment Act funding is put to work, state agencies and recipients of programs or projects funded by the CCA are directed to use a funding acknowledgement and or logo. Directed. So this is not optional. This is mandatory. That if you're getting CCA money, you are directed by the state of Washington and Governor Jay Inslee to make sure that you display loud and proud a logo and or an acknowledgement of the wonderful CCA that has brought this money to you. And it's really nefarious as Todd dives into it. I'm just going to read a couple pieces of his story he published at Washington Policy Center. I encourage you to read the whole thing. He says, as Washington's CO2 tax, known as the Climate Commitment Act, heads to the ballot this fall, a logo highlighting projects that received funding from that tax will become more prevalent. And you are paying for it, he writes. The use of taxpayer resources to promote the CO2 tax follows the decision by the legislature to send one-time checks of $200 to utility customers funded by the Climate Commitment Act just 2 months before the November election. It is part of a pattern we are likely to see accelerate as the vote on Initiative 2117, which would repeal the CO2 tax, draws near. So he says, you got this website, they've got this logo. If you get funds, you've got to put the logo up. But as Todd goes on to write, it isn't just the logo. Organizations are required to use overtly political language on their websites, press releases, publications, and any media or public outreach. So he says, after acknowledging that the state provided the money, organizations are required to include, quote, the CCA supports Washington's climate action efforts by putting cap and invest dollars to work, reducing climate pollution, creating jobs, and improving public health. Information about the CCA is available at climate.wa.gov. So you've got, this is propaganda. This is absolutely propaganda. If you're benefiting from the CCA in getting climate funds, you got to put the logo and then you have to say or write that exact line. That's government propaganda, black and white. And as Todd notes, he says, contrary to the claims that the money from the CO2 tax is being used to reduce carbon emissions, most of the money thus far has been spent expanding government and subsidizing special interest groups. And that's spot on. That's exactly what this is about. Ask them, challenge them to show you tangible outcomes from the CCA thus far. Tangible outcomes in improving the climate and environment. They can't. They're giving a lot of this money to their cronies. Bottom line, and they're doing some things, as we've discussed on the show before, shutting down parts of working forests in the name of climate justice and in a way that's going to make sure that those forests actually sequester less carbon as time goes on. Oh yeah, great place to spend the CCA money. So this is wild. You think about all this, and Todd's right. This is only going to accelerate. This is going to be in your face everywhere you turn. Lies about, how great the CCA is. Lies like Marco Lias is spreading, Senator Marco Lias, about, that critical transportation project near you. That'll lose its funding if you repeal the CCA. It's not true. Don't believe it. We can't repair bridges and roads if you repeal the CCA. That's not true. Don't believe it. We're going to use government money to write taxpayers a $200 refund check for the CCA right before the election. That timing's not coincidental, not at all. Don't fall for it. We're going to see all these entities with their Climate Commitment Act logo talking about how great the Climate Commitment Act is for jobs, improving public health, reducing climate pollution. That's government propaganda. Ignore it. And what do we say? Vote yes, pay less. If you vote yes, you'll pay less. You see how easy our messaging is? We don't need lies. We don't need taxpayer funds to prop up our messages. We don't need fear mongering. We just need the truth. And the truth is that if you vote yes, you'll pay less. So keep that in mind.